The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing the marble-floored lobby of Manhattan's most exclusive medical center. Marcus Wellington stepped out, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished stone as he adjusted his platinum cufflinks. The phone pressed to his ear carried the familiar weight of another multi-million-dollar deal, but his attention wavered when he heard something that made his blood run cold. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Please, a small voice whispered from somewhere near the reception desk. Please take care of my little brother when I'm gone. Marcus froze mid-sentence, his conversation about quarterly projections suddenly meaningless. The voice belonged to a girl who couldn't have been more than 12 years old, her words carrying a maturity that no child should possess. He ended his call without ceremony and turned toward the sound, his chest tightening with each step. Behind a cluster of potted palms near the information desk, he found them. The girl sat in a wheelchair that had seen better days, its chrome frame dulled and one wheel slightly askew. Her dark hair hung in loose waves past her shoulders, and despite the pallor of her skin, her eyes held a fierce determination that reminded Marcus of someone he'd rather forget. Beside her stood a boy who couldn't have been older than 6, clutching a worn stuffed elephant to his chest. His wide brown eyes darted nervously between his sister and the bustling hospital staff, as if he understood more than his years should allow. The girl was speaking to a woman in scrubs, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. His name is Tommy, and he likes peanut butter sandwiches cut into triangles. He's scared of thunderstorms, but if you play his favorite song, he calms down. It's the one about the wheels on the bus. She paused, swallowing hard. He doesn't understand what's happening to me, so please don't tell him. Just promise me someone will love him. The nurse knelt down, her face a mask of professional compassion tinged with personal heartbreak. Sweetie, we'll do everything we can to find him a good home through the proper channels. The social worker will be here soon to discuss options. Options, the girl repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. He's not an option. He's my brother. Marcus found himself stepping closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. He'd built an empire worth billions, commanded boardrooms filled with the most powerful people in the world. Yet this slip of a girl possessed a strength that humbled him. When she looked up and their eyes met, he saw something that shattered the carefully constructed walls around his heart. She wasn't asking for pity. She wasn't begging for money or making demands. She was simply trying to ensure that the most important person in her world would be safe when she could no longer protect him. The pure, selfless love in her gaze was something Marcus had spent decades convincing himself didn't exist. I'm sorry, the nurse said gently, but the waiting list for adoption is very long, especially for older children. We'll try our best, but I can't make promises. The girl's composure cracked for just a moment, and Marcus saw the terrified child beneath. The brave facade. He's not older. He's just a baby. Someone has to want him. Tommy tugged on his sister's sleeve, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia, I'm hungry. I know, sweetheart, Mia replied, reaching into a small backpack beside her chair. She pulled out a crumpled granola bar, the kind you'd find at a gas station, and unwrapped it carefully. Here, but eat it slowly. We need to make it last. Marcus watched as she broke the bar in half, giving the larger piece to Tommy while keeping the smaller portion for herself. The gesture was so automatic, so practiced, that it spoke volumes about their life together. This girl had been caring for her brother far longer than any child should have to. The nurse stood, checking her watch. The social worker should be here within the hour. Until then, you're welcome to wait in the family lounge. It's more comfortable than the lobby. We're fine here, Mia said quickly. We don't want to be any trouble. As the nurse walked away, Marcus found himself approaching the siblings. He'd negotiated deals worth more than most countries' GDP, yet he'd never felt more nervous than he did in this moment. What did he know about talking to children? His own childhood had been spent in boarding schools and summer camps, raised by nannies and tutors while his parents built their own fortune. "Excuse me," he said softly, crouching down to meet Mia's eye level. "I couldn't help but overhear. My name is Marcus." Mia's eyes narrowed slightly, her protective instincts flaring. "Are you a doctor?" "No, I'm not a doctor." Marcus glanced at Tommy, who was studying him with the intense curiosity only children possessed. "I was here visiting someone, and I heard what you said about your brother. If you're from social services, we already told the nurse someone's coming," Mia said, her voice taking on a defensive edge. Marcus shook his head. "I'm not from social services either. I'm just someone who thinks what you're doing for your brother is incredibly brave." For a moment, Mia's guard dropped, and Marcus saw the exhaustion she'd been hiding. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her clothes, while clean, showed signs of careful mending. This girl had been fighting battles no child should face, and she was losing the war against time. "Brave doesn't help him when I'm gone," she said quietly. "He needs someone who'll remember that he's afraid of the dark and that he still thinks. Monsters live under beds. Someone who'll teach him to ride a bike and help him with his homework." Her voice broke slightly. "Someone who'll love him like I do." Tommy had finished his half of the granola bar and was now leaning against his sister's wheelchair, his eyelids heavy. Without thinking, Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Tommy a simple game with colorful bubbles that popped when touched. The boy's face lit up with wonder, his earlier anxiety momentarily forgotten. "You're good with him," Mia observed, surprise evident in her voice. Marcus nearly laughed at the irony. He'd never considered himself good with anyone, let alone children. His relationships were built on mutual benefit and clear expectations. Emotions were complications to be managed, not experienced. Yet something about these two siblings made him want to be better than he was. "Can I ask what brings you here today?" Marcus asked gently. Mia was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her words were measured and careful. "I have something wrong with my heart. The doctors say it's been getting worse for a while, and now it's too late to fix it." She looked down at Tommy, who was absorbed in the phone game. "They think I have maybe a few weeks left." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd expected something serious, but hearing it spoken so matter-of-factly by someone so young made it real in a way that statistical reports and medical charts never could. This girl was dying, and her greatest concern wasn't for herself but for the little boy who would be left behind. "What about your parents?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Car accident when Tommy was 2, Mia said simply. "I've been taking care of him ever since. We lived with our grandmother for a while, but she passed last year. It's just been us." Marcus felt something shift inside his chest, a crack in the armor he'd built around his heart over decades of disappointment and betrayal. These children had faced more loss and hardship than most adults ever would. Yet Mia's first instinct was still to protect her brother rather than rage against the unfairness of it all. "The state will find him a good family," Mia continued, though Marcus could hear the doubt in her voice. "They have to, right? He's so sweet and smart. Anyone would be lucky to have him." Marcus looked at Tommy, who was now making quiet sound effects too.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Accompany the bubble-popping game. The boy's innocence was heartbreaking, his trust in his sister absolute. He had no idea that his entire world was about to change forever. What if someone wanted to adopt both of you? Marcus heard himself asking, the words surprising him as much as they did Mia. Mia stared at him as if he'd suggested they could fly to the moon. "Both of us. But I'm sick." Nobody adopts sick kids, especially not teenagers. And even if they did, what would be the point? "I'd just be a burden until..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus felt his throat tighten. In all his years of business, he'd learned to read people, to understand their motivations and desires. But this girl's selflessness was something entirely foreign to his experience. She couldn't conceive of someone wanting to care for her simply because she deserved love and comfort in whatever time she had left. The point Marcus said carefully, would be that Tommy gets to stay with the person he loves most in the world. And you get to know that he's safe and cared for. Tears gathered in Mia's eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. That's a nice thought, but it's not realistic. People want healthy babies they can raise from the beginning, not complicated situations like us. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion near the elevator drew their attention. A harried-looking woman in a business suit was arguing with the reception staff, her voice carrying across the lobby despite her attempts to keep it low. I don't care what the waiting list says, the woman was saying. My client specifically requested children under 5, preferably infants. We're not running a charity here. These people pay premium fees for premium selections. Marcus felt his blood run cold as he realized what he was hearing. This woman was treating child adoption like a business transaction, reducing vulnerable children to products to be marketed to wealthy clients. The casual cruelty of it made him physically ill. Mia had heard it too, her face going pale. She pulled Tommy closer, her protective instincts flaring even in her weakened state. Come on, Tommy, she whispered. Let's go find somewhere else to wait. But as she tried to maneuver her wheelchair, the brake caught, and she nearly tipped forward. Marcus steadied her without thinking, his hand gentle on her shoulder. The brief contact revealed how fragile she truly was, her bones sharp beneath his palm. Thank you, she said quietly, but Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. She'd overheard enough to understand that her hopes for Tommy's future might be more complicated than she'd thought. The social worker had finished her conversation and was now approaching them, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. You must be Mia and Tommy, she said, consulting a tablet. I'm Sarah Chun from Child Protective Services. I understand you're looking for placement options? Mia straightened in her chair, summoning strength from somewhere deep inside. My brother needs a family. A good family. People who'll love him and take care of him. Sarah's expression softened slightly. I understand this is a difficult situation. We'll do our best to find appropriate placement for Tommy. There are several group homes that specialize in caring for children who've experienced trauma. Group homes. Mia's voice was sharp with alarm. No, he needs a family. Real parents. Who'll adopt him and make him part of their family forever. Sarah sat down in a nearby chair, her manner gentle but realistic. Mia, I want to be honest with you. Single adoptions for children Tommy's age are challenging, especially when there's a history of family medical issues. Most prospective parents prefer infants or very young children without complicated backgrounds. Marcus watched Mia's face crumble, her careful composure finally giving way to despair. She'd been holding on to the hope that someone would want Tommy, that her sacrifice would ensure his happiness. Now that hope was being systematically destroyed by bureaucratic realities and the selfishness of adults who saw children as accessories rather than human beings deserving of love. But he's perfect, Mia whispered, her voice breaking. He's smart and funny and kind. He just needs someone to give him a chance. Tommy looked up from the phone, sensing his sister's distress. Mia, why are you sad? Before Mia could answer, Marcus found himself standing. The decision crystallized in his mind with startling clarity, cutting through decades of carefully maintained emotional distance. What if I wanted to adopt them both? The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything Marcus had believed about himself. Sarah looked up at him with surprise, while Mia stared as if she couldn't quite process what she'd heard. I'm sorry, but who are you? Sarah asked, her professional training kicking in. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his business card, the simple white rectangle that had opened doors worth billions of dollars. Marcus Wellington. I'm the CEO of Wellington Holdings. Sarah's eyes widened as she recognized the name. Marcus Wellington was a legend in business circles, his company a global empire spanning technology, real estate, and investment banking. His personal net worth was the subject of speculation in financial magazines, but everyone agreed it was substantial enough to solve most world problems. Mr. Wellington, Sarah said carefully, adoption is a complex process that requires extensive background checks, home studies, and evaluation periods. It's not something that can be decided impulsively. I understand that, Marcus replied, his voice taking on the authoritative tone that had commanded boardrooms around the world. What I'm asking is whether you would be willing to begin that process if I formally expressed interest in adopting both children. Mia was staring at him with a mixture of hope and disbelief. You barely know us. Why would you want to do something like that? Marcus knelt down again, meeting her eyes directly. The truth was complicated, rooted in his own childhood of emotional neglect and a lifetime spent believing that meaningful connections were impossible. But looking at this brave girl who was facing death with more grace than most adults faced minor setbacks, he found himself speaking from a place he'd forgotten existed. Because, he said simply, everyone deserves to be loved. You deserve to. Spend whatever time you have left knowing that Tommy is safe and cherished. And Tommy deserves to grow up with someone who sees him the way you do. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The busy hospital continued around them, but their small corner of the lobby felt suspended in time. Marcus could see the war playing out. In Mia's eyes, between hope and the practical reality that had been her constant companion. You don't understand what you'd be signing up for, she said finally. I need a lot of medical care. Medications, treatments, maybe surgery if they think it might buy me more time. It's expensive and complicated and heartbreaking. And Tommy, he's been through so much already. He has nightmares sometimes, and he doesn't talk much to strangers. It could take months for him to trust you. Marcus felt something inside his chest expand, a warmth he hadn't experienced since he was very young. This girl was trying to talk him out of helping her, listing all the reasons why caring for them would be difficult. She couldn't comprehend that someone might choose the hard path simply because it was the right one. Mia, he said gently, I've spent my entire adult life solving complicated problems. Medical care can be arranged. Money isn't an issue. And as for Tommy taking time to trust me, well, that just means I'll have to prove that I'm worth trusting. Sarah was frantically typing notes on her tablet, clearly trying to process this unexpected development. Mr. Wellington, I have to ask, do you have any experience with children? Are you married? What's your living situation? I'm not married, Marcus admitted. I live alone in a penthouse that's far too big for one person. And no, I don't have experience with children, but I'm willing to learn. This isn't like hiring a new employee, Sarah said, though her tone was more curious than critical. Children need stability, emotional connection, patience. They need someone who can be present for them, not just provide for them financially. Marcus nodded, understanding the distinction she was making. His own parents had provided everything money could buy, but had never been emotionally available. He'd sworn never to have children himself, convinced he'd inherited their inability to form meaningful bonds. Yet something about Mia and Tommy was challenging everything he thought he knew about himself. You're right, he said, but I'm hoping I can figure it out as I go, with help from people who know more than I do. Tommy had been listening to the adult conversation with the focused attention of a child who'd learned early that grown-up decisions affected his life in profound ways. Now he tugged on Marcus's sleeve, his voice small but clear. Will you really take care of Mia too? The question cut straight to the heart of everything. Marcus looked into Tommy's earnest brown eyes and saw complete trust, the faith of a child who believed adults could fix anything if they really wanted to. The weight of that trust was both terrifying and transformative. Yes, Marcus said, the promise feeling more binding than any contract he'd ever signed. I'll take care of both of you. Mia was crying now, tears streaming down her face as years of carefully maintained control finally gave way. I don't understand why you'd want to do this for us. Marcus reached out and gently took her hand, surprised by how natural the gesture felt. Because 3 hours ago, I thought I had everything I needed. A successful company, financial security, respect in my field. But meeting you two has made me realize how empty all of that is if you don't have people to share it with. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and bureaucratic procedures that Marcus navigated with the same focused intensity he brought to corporate acquisitions. Sarah made it clear that the adoption process would take months even, under the best circumstances, but she agreed to expedite the preliminary evaluations given Mia's medical situation. We can arrange for emergency foster placement while the adoption process moves forward, Sarah explained. Given Mr. Wellington's resources and the unique circumstances, I'm confident we can fast-track most of the requirements. Marcus was already on his phone with his assistant, arranging for a team of the city's best pediatric cardiologists to review Mia's case. Money might not be able to buy happiness, but it could certainly buy access to the kind of medical care that might give them more time together. Mr. Wellington, Mia said during a quiet moment while Sarah was making her own phone calls. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you really want us? Or do you just feel sorry for us? The question revealed the depth of her insight and the pain of her past experiences. Marcus realized that this girl had probably faced pity from well-meaning adults before, the kind of sympathy that felt good for the giver but offered little real help to the recipient. I'd be lying if I said I don't feel sorry for what you've been through, Marcus said honestly. But that's not why I want to help. The truth is, I've spent most of my life believing that caring about people only leads to disappointment. But watching you fight for your brother, seeing the love between you two, it's shown me something I thought I'd lost a long time ago. What's that? Hope, Marcus said simply. Hope that maybe there's more to life than just surviving from one day to the next. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus found himself seeing the hospital through different eyes. He'd been here countless times for business meetings and charity events, but now he noticed details that had escaped him before. The way families clustered together in waiting rooms, drawing strength from each other. The exhausted parents taking turns sleeping in uncomfortable chairs. The siblings entertaining each other with simple games and stories. This was a world of real human connection, messier and more complicated than the sanitized environment of corporate boardrooms, but infinitely more meaningful. For the first time in years, Marcus felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. By evening, the preliminary arrangements were in place. Marcus would take temporary custody of both children while the formal adoption process moved forward. A team of social workers would conduct regular check-ins, and Mia would continue her medical care under the supervision of the specialists Marcus had arranged. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Marcus realized he had no idea how to take care of children on a day-to-day basis. His penthouse apartment was a showcase of modern design, all sharp edges and expensive materials, entirely unsuitable for a sick 12-year-old and an energetic 6-year-old. We'll need to make some changes to my place, he said, thinking out loud. Child-proofing, appropriate furniture, toys, and games. What else do children need? Mia managed a small smile, the first genuine one he'd seen from her. Love, patience, and really good bedtime stories. Tommy had fallen asleep in Marcus's arms during the final paperwork session, his small body completely relaxed in sleep. The trust implicit in that surrender moved Marcus more than any business achievement ever had. This little boy was depending on him completely, believing that Marcus would keep him safe and cared for. As they rode the elevator down to the parking garage, Marcus felt the weight of his new responsibilities settling over him like a mantle. He was no longer just responsible for quarterly profits and shareholder value. Two vulnerable children were now depending on him for everything from medical care to emotional support. Second thoughts? Mia asked quietly, reading his expression, with the perceptiveness of someone who'd learned early to gauge adult moods for signs of danger. No, Marcus said, and was surprised to realize he meant it completely. Just trying to figure out how to be the person you both deserve. The ride to Marcus's building was quiet, Tommy still sleeping peacefully while Mia stared out the window. At the city lights, Marcus found himself wondering what she was thinking, whether she was having second thoughts about trusting a stranger with the most important person in her world. Mia, he said as they pulled up to his building. I want you to know that if you ever feel uncomfortable or if you change your mind about any of this, we can figure out other arrangements. I don't want you to feel trapped. She turned to look at him, her expression serious beyond her years. "Mr. Wellington, I've been taking care of Tommy by myself for 4 years. I've made a lot of decisions that I wasn't sure about, but this doesn't feel like one of them. You're the first person who's wanted both of us, not just him. That means everything." The doorman at Marcus's building did a double take when he saw the unlikely group entering the lobby. Marcus Wellington was known for his solitary lifestyle, arriving and leaving alone, never entertaining guests or showing any interest in family life. Yet here he was, carrying a sleeping child while walking beside a girl in a wheelchair, looking more human than anyone had ever seen him. The elevator ride to the penthouse seemed to take forever, the silence heavy with unspoken questions and uncertainties. When the doors finally opened, Marcus realized he was seeing his home through the eyes of children who'd known poverty and insecurity. The vast space, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furnishings, probably looked more like a museum than a home. "It's really big," Tommy said sleepily, having woken up during the elevator ride. He stayed close to Marcus, his small hand gripping the fabric of Marcus's suit jacket. "Too big, probably," Marcus admitted. "We'll have to figure out how to make it feel more like home." Mia wheeled herself slowly through the main living area, taking in the expensive artwork and designer furniture. "Where will we sleep?" Marcus realized he hadn't thought that far ahead. "There are 3 guest bedrooms. You can each choose whichever one you like best. We'll get proper furniture tomorrow, things that are more comfortable for kids." The master bedroom had been his private sanctuary for years, a space where he retreated from the demands of business and the complications of human interaction. Now, as he looked at it through the eyes of children who needed safety and comfort, it seemed cold and unwelcoming. "Actually," he said impulsively, "why don't you both take the master bedroom? It's bigger, and it has a better view. I can use one of the guest rooms." Mia stared at him as if he'd offered to give them the moon. "We can't take your bedroom. That's crazy." "It's not crazy if it makes you more comfortable," Marcus replied. "Besides, it's your home now too. We should all be comfortable." As they settled in for the night, Marcus found himself completely out of his depth. He'd negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but helping a 6-year-old brush his teeth felt more challenging than anything he'd ever attempted. Tommy was patient with his inexperience, even offering gentle corrections when Marcus used too much toothpaste or forgot to help him reach the sink properly. "You're learning," Tommy said encouragingly, as if he were the adult and Marcus the child. Mia needed help transferring from her wheelchair to the bed, and Marcus was struck by how light she was, her illness having stolen much of her physical strength. But her spirit remained unbroken, her first concern still for Tommy's comfort, rather than her own. "He likes his elephant next to his pillow," she instructed as Marcus helped tuck Tommy into the enormous bed. "And he needs a nightlight. He's afraid of complete darkness." Marcus made mental notes of everything, determined to learn the small details that would make Tommy feel secure. He'd spent years managing complex systems and processes, but this was different. This was about understanding the emotional needs of a traumatized child and earning his trust one bedtime routine at a time. As he turned to leave them to sleep, Mia called his name softly. "Marcus." "Yes. Thank you for all of this. I know it's going to be hard, and I know we're going to need a lot of help. But for the first time since the doctors told me about my heart, I'm not terrified about what happens to Tommy." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion he'd spent decades learning to suppress. "Get some rest, Mia. Tomorrow we'll start figuring out how to be a family." The word felt strange on his tongue, foreign and frightening and wonderful all at once. Family had been a concept he'd abandoned years ago, convinced that his childhood experiences had left him incapable of forming those kinds of bonds. Yet here he was, responsible for 2 children who needed not just financial support, but emotional connection, love, and stability. As he stood in his own guest room that night, Marcus realized that his entire life had changed in the span of a single day. The careful routines and emotional barriers that had defined his existence for decades were already crumbling, replaced by something messier and more uncertain, but infinitely more meaningful. He thought about Mia's brave face as she discussed her own mortality, and Tommy's innocent trust as he fell asleep in a stranger's arms. These children had faced more loss and hardship than he'd ever experienced, yet they possessed a capacity for love and hope that humbled him completely. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: medical appointments for Mia, therapy sessions for Tommy, shopping trips for furniture and toys, and all the thousands of things that made a house into a home. Marcus would have to learn to navigate the complex world of childhood emotions and needs, guided only by his desire to be worthy of the trust these children had placed in him. But for tonight, as he listened to the soft sounds of breathing from the room next door, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the empty quiet of solitude, but the profound calm that comes from knowing you're exactly where you belong, doing exactly what you're meant to do. The next morning brought sunshine streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the penthouse in warm golden light. Marcus woke early, as was his habit, but for the first time in years, he wasn't immediately reaching for his phone to check overnight messages from international markets. Instead, he found himself listening for sounds from the next room, wondering if the children were awake and how they'd slept in their new surroundings. When he emerged from his room, he found Tommy sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, playing quietly with a few small toys he'd pulled from his backpack. The boy looked tiny in the vast space, but he seemed content, making soft sound effects as he moved his action figures through elaborate adventures. "Good morning, Tommy," Marcus said softly, not wanting to startle him. Tommy looked up with a shy smile. "Good morning. Mia's still sleeping. She sleeps a lot now because of her medicine." The matter-of-fact way Tommy discussed his sister's illness revealed how much this little boy had already had to understand about adult realities. Marcus felt a fresh wave of determination to protect whatever remained of Tommy's childhood innocence, while still honoring his intelligence and resilience. "Are you hungry?" Marcus asked. "I should probably warn you. I'm not much of a cook, but I can make decent pancakes." Tommy's eyes lit up. "Mia loves pancakes. She says they're like sunshine you can eat." As Marcus moved around his seldom-used kitchen, gathering ingredients and trying to remember how to operate appliances he'd barely touched, he found himself talking to Tommy about simple things: what he liked to eat for breakfast, what his favorite games were, whether he missed his old neighborhood. "I miss our apartment sometimes," Tommy admitted, helping Marcus measure flour with the serious concentration of a child given an important job. "But Mia was always worried about the rent money, and sometimes we didn't have enough food. She tried to hide it, but I knew." The casual revelation broke Marcus's heart. He thought about his own childhood, spent in mansions with full staff and every material need met, yet emotionally barren. These children had faced real poverty and insecurity, yet the love between them had created something more valuable than any luxury Marcus had ever known. When Mia finally emerged from the bedroom, moving slowly and leaning heavily on her wheelchair, she found Marcus and Tommy covered in flour and laughing over a batch of slightly lopsided pancakes. The kitchen looked like a disaster zone, but Tommy was grinning with genuine happiness, and Marcus looked more relaxed than she'd seen him. "This is what a family looks like," she thought to herself, though she didn't say it aloud. The word "still" felt too precious, too fragile to voice. "Something smells amazing," she said instead, maneuvering her chair to the table. Marcus looked up, noticing immediately that Mia looked more tired than she had the night before. Her color was pale, and she was moving with the careful deliberation of someone managing pain. He made a mental note to call the cardiologist he'd arranged to see her, wondering if her medication schedule needed adjustment. "Tommy was my sous chef," Marcus said, serving the pancakes with a flourish that made Tommy giggle. "Although I think he might be better at this than I am." As they ate breakfast together, Marcus found himself observing the small intimacies between the siblings. The way Mia automatically cut Tommy's pancakes into smaller pieces, how Tommy saved the best bite for last and offered it to his sister without being asked. The gentle way Mia reminded Tommy to use his napkin, and how he accepted the guidance without resentment. These children had created their own family unit, complete with traditions and unspoken understandings, born from necessity but sustained by genuine love. Marcus felt honored to be allowed into their circle, even as he wondered whether he'd ever truly belong. After breakfast, Marcus made a series of phone calls that would have seemed impossible just days before. He called his assistant to clear his schedule for the next 2 weeks, something he'd never done in his entire career. He contacted a pediatric furniture specialist to arrange for child-appropriate bedroom sets to be delivered that afternoon. He scheduled appointments with the best medical team money could access, determined to explore every possible treatment option for Mia's condition. "You don't have to change your whole life for us," Mia said quietly, having overheard parts of his conversations. Marcus paused, his phone still in his hand. "Mia, my whole life before yesterday was work, sleep, and more work. If I have to choose between closing another business deal and learning how to braid your hair, the business deal can wait." The offer to braid her hair made Mia smile, the first completely unguarded expression of joy Marcus had seen from her. "You'd really learn to braid hair?" "I'd learn to do anything that would make you happy," Marcus replied, and was surprised by how completely he meant it. The afternoon brought a parade of delivery trucks, transforming the sterile penthouse into something that might actually accommodate children. Tommy was fascinated by the process, following the delivery team around and asking endless questions about how furniture was assembled and whether the beds were really going to stay there forever. "Forever is a big word," Mia cautioned gently, though Marcus could see the hope in her eyes. "In this case, it's exactly the right word," Marcus assured her. "These are your beds, in your home, for as long as you want them." As evening approached, Marcus realized he had no idea what bedtime routines looked like for children who'd been largely caring for themselves. He'd had nannies as a child, but he'd never been on the caretaking side of the equation. He was relieved when Mia offered to walk him through Tommy's usual routine, though he could see the effort it cost her. "He needs a bath every other day, teeth brushed every night, and at least 3 bedtime stories," she explained. "He likes the ones about brave animals best, but nothing too scary. And he needs his elephant close enough to touch." Marcus filed away every detail, determined to maintain the sense of security and routine that Mia had worked so hard to create for her brother. As he helped Tommy with his bath, he was struck by the boy's easy acceptance of his help. Tommy chatted about his day, asked questions about Marcus's work, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know his new guardian. "Are you going to be my dad now?" Tommy asked as Marcus helped him into his pajamas. The question caught Marcus off guard, its simplicity hiding layers of complexity. "Would you like me to be?" Tommy considered this seriously. "I think so. Mia says dads are supposed to take care of their kids and love them no matter what. She's been like a mom and a dad to me, but she gets tired now. It would be nice if she could just be my sister and you could be my dad." The trust in Tommy's voice was overwhelming. This child was ready to accept Marcus as his father based on just one day of pancakes and furniture shopping. The responsibility of living up to that trust felt heavier than any business obligation Marcus had ever undertaken. "Then yes," Marcus said softly, "I'd be honored to be your dad." As they settled into the new bedtime routine, Marcus read 3 picture books about adventurous rabbits and clever foxes, his voice growing more confident with each page. Tommy fell asleep, clutching his elephant, a peaceful smile on his face. From her bed nearby, Mia watched with tears in her eyes, finally allowing herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd found the miracle she'd been praying for. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.